Roy Keane said after the Arsenal game that even if Michael Carrick was to win every single game from now to the end of the season, he still wouldn't give him the job because he's not qualified to win Premier League titles and that United need a manager to win Premier League titles. I think Keane's probably, his opinion is probably representative of a third of our fan base that would agree with that, and probably the reasons behind it as well would be the same for a third of our fan base. I think a third of our fan base probably are somewhere in the middle, and a third of our fan base would say that if Carrick gets us Europe, particularly the Champions League, then he deserves a crack at the job. For the people in the same third as Keane who think he's not experienced enough, he hasn't maybe got the background to do it, we're not going to win Premier League titles, my question would be, who are we talking about? Who are the people that you would want then? And the names that keep coming up are Ancelotti, Enrique, and Tuchel. I'll come back to Tuchel in a bit. But Ancelotti and Enrique, two serial winners. They've won wherever they've been. Absolutely, they've got the pedigree in the game. They've got the credibility. They've got the skills to win titles. But there's a few issues with that. It's ideological, I'd say. It's idealistic, should I say, because of a number of reasons. Our football board couldn't attract a manager like that. The likes of Barada, Jason Wilcox, they're not particularly impressive figures, characters in the game. Ancelotti and Enrique would be essentially interviewing the club as much as you're interviewing them. They're that good. They have such a pedigree and such a standing in the game that they're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. And I just don't think our board could attract a manager like that. I think they would look beneath the surface. Ancelotti and Enrique would look beneath the surface and see that there's no recent history of success. We're not close to being Premier League champions. They don't have the finances. They don't have the ambition. They don't have the experts in key positions at the club to give a structure that would win a Premier League title. They are both managers. They're not head coaches. So as I've said before, probably the likes of Ancelotti and Enrique would be happy to, or maybe happier, to cede some control to the likes of Luis Campos or Berta or even a Dan Ashworth, a director of football with a body of work with some credibility in the game. But they're not going to cede control to the likes of Jason Wilcox. So United would have to do a big climb down from their way of doing things with Amrim to give the job to someone like Ancelotti and Tuchel and let them be Ancelotti and Enrique and let them be a manager, not just a head coach. It would be very different. It'd be a wild swing in another direction, really, which I wouldn't put past them. And maybe they would think, well, that manager's worth doing that for. But even then, as I say, the structure isn't there for United to win Premier League titles. And more than that, the ambition isn't there to win Premier League titles. United have showed no intent to even look like a club that has that ambition. United's intent, in my opinion, is that over the next few years, until the stadium gets built, if it gets built, they want to avoid anything too dramatic, stave off protests, and finish in Europe more seasons than they don't. I see a club that's Arsenal circa 2009 to 14, which was the criteria for success is getting Europe every season. It's not winning trophies. It's not winning the big trophies. That was post them going into their stadium when they had to tighten their belts. Obviously, we apparently are going to move into a new stadium, so this is before it even happens. But we've got notorious belt tighteners in the Glazers, and Ineos in particular since they've come in. So I don't see any ambition from them to make United into a title-winning team. It's not the primary objective. The primary objective is to make money. If we had owners that were hell-bent on winning, put expert operators in each key position at the club, and were prepared to put infinite amounts of money in to try and fund success, and also that it was the primary objective, then absolutely the likes of Ancelotti and Enrique come into the conversation. So my response to that third of our fan base that think Carrick hasn't got the experience, we need a manager who's going to win your Premier League titles. If you want a manager who's going to win your Premier League titles, you need to focus your energy on getting rid of this current ownership then, because then we might be able to get a manager who could win Premier League titles, and it actually might work, because you could give them a structure that would help them to win. We haven't got the structure there for a manager to come in and win a Premier League title. It's not like we're knocking on the door and we're not that far away and someone just needs to come in to finish it off. Tuchel is probably slightly different to Enrique and Ancelotti in that I get the impression he's a fan of United. I think I saw an interview with him a few years ago where he was in awe of Old Trafford. I think it was when he was managing Bayern Munich and he brought them to Old Trafford. Maybe were we in the Champions League around the time he was in with Bayern Munich, or maybe it was Dortmund. I don't know, but I get the impression he has like a bit of a soft spot for United, and I think it's the type of job that would suit his ego. But there's issues around that. He manages England, and England will hope to get to the latter stages of the World Cup in the summer. So when's he going to start? You can't go into next season and not have a manager in place or a manager that's focused on a World Cup, and you're trying to have conversations with them about squad development and planning for the season and pre-season and then the season, and that just doesn't work. It'd start too late. But also, there would have to be, again, a climb down from the board. They'd have to have a very clear conversation and probably a written agreement that said, pertaining to the amount of control that Tuchel would want, and I think that would be quite a bit of control. So I think it's not impossible for him to do it, but it would need to be very carefully thought out, and I don't think this is the summer to get him, because he would start too late. I still don't think he'd win a Premier League, because I don't think anyone would win a Premier League with United. I don't think United will ever win a Premier League whilst these owners and this structure is in place. On Carrick then, what I'm about to say next, I'll qualify it, is completely dependent on him getting into Europe. So all this could be completely speculative and hypothesis and projection of something that will never happen. Maybe in the next few weeks we absolutely fall flat on our face, we're absolutely shit, we lose loads of games, and this video looks a bit stupid. What I'm going to say next really is about if, which is a massive word, if he gets European football, should he get the job? And what does he need to do in order for that to be the case? For me, which third of the fan base am I in? If he gets European football, he will get the job. And that's Champions League, Europa League, Conference League. And I would be an advocate of that for many reasons. We haven't got great owners. So what they want is someone who will do as they're told. What the fans want is someone who can produce good results within a limited structure. So you need someone who can do both those things. You need someone who will do as they're told, but within that limited structure, break through ceilings whilst doing what they're told by the owners. First and foremost, I don't want these owners to stay. I want them to go. I want us to have proper owners. If we had proper owners and Michael Carrick got us in the Champions League, Europa League, he probably puts himself on the shortlist to be interviewed, but he doesn't necessarily get the job. If we had proper owners, decent owners, as I mentioned before, then the pool of managers we can choose from is far, far bigger. We haven't got better owners, so that's not going to happen. So we've got to deal with the cards we've been dealt. And the cards we've been dealt is we've got the Glazers and Ineos as the owners. And as I say, what they want is someone who'll do as they're told. And Carrick is probably the type of guy, I believe, that probably won't kick up too much of a stink for the board. So the thing then is, well, can he produce results within that structure? Can he manage up? Can he manage down? So let's look at that. In the recent past, we've had our moments. We've had moments like Liverpool in the quarter-final of the FA Cup when we won 4-3. Down to 10 men at one point, 3-2 down. Bruno ended up playing as sweeper, and it was just utter carnage, and we came back, and it was a air scare wacky races type of game where we came back and won 4-3. Ahmad scored the winning goal, and it was brilliant. It's a fantastic day. Did I think after that United had turned the corner? No, I thought that it was a great day, but the week after that, we'll be back to the usual shit again, and that's sure enough, that's what happened. Same season, we won the FA Cup against City. Phenomenal performance, brilliant day. The glow of that lasted for quite some time, but did I think that Erik ten Hag then was the right man for the job because of that? No, nothing had changed. He just put together a one-off performance which deserved massive credit, and it should have been his final hurrah. Last season when we beat City at the Etihad before Christmas, great day again. Early in Amorim's tenure, so plenty of scope for optimism after that. But did I really think we'd turned a corner? No. Arsenal away in January of last year, 2-2 in the FA Cup, played for an hour with 10 men, beat them on penalties. Did I think we'd turn a corner? No. Anfield last season, 2-2. Did I think we'd turn a corner? No. Anfield this season, 2-1. Did I think we'd turn a corner? No. So there's been moments, but I've never felt like we've been turning a corner. I have something, and I'm sure everyone has it, but I have something that I refer to as like the United feeling. And what I mean by that is when I'm watching the team, or when United produce something, bit of magic, bit of mystique, it's hard to describe, something that I identify with maybe from when I was younger when I watched the team. There's something in me that I feel regarding United that I don't feel regarding anything else, and so that's why I specifically would call it the United feeling. I talked to my lad about it. You've probably got it. Hopefully my lad will get it as he gets older. It's unique to you and your relationship with the club. And after those games that I've just mentioned, those highs of recent years, for a brief period of time I've felt the United feeling, because it's something I could identify with. After City, when we got the result, when Carrick came in, I felt it on that day. I felt it all weekend, and I felt it all week in the build-up to the Arsenal game, and I sensed we could do something against Arsenal. And at 2-2 against Arsenal, I said to my lad, I still think we're going to win this because we're the better team. But there was something there that hadn't been there for a long time, and that's belief, and that's hope, and that's optimism, and that's something I can identify with that's out there on the pitch. Now, maybe it's because I've been starved of that feeling for so long, or certainly any sustainable time where I've felt that feeling. But all week this week, that United feeling has been there. It's elevated. It's elevated everything. It's given everything. It's given us a sense of hope. And Carrick and his coaching team have come in and, for me, produced, or the team have produced, two incredible performances that were both quite different, which I think is quite good, really, because it's two different styles of play we were up against. But you could say, yeah, but it's two teams that are easy to get up for. So all we've got as evidence now is we've won 2 games against 2 teams that we can all agree are pretty easy to get up for. So the Fulham game then becomes the acid test, really. The Fulham game, then Tottenham, then West Ham, but we've only take one at a time, so it's Fulham next. And what I want to see is those levels remain the same. The performance might change because you're up against a different tactical setup, but by levels, what I mean is desire to win the ball back, desire to keep the ball out of the net, discipline, not cutting corners on or off the ball, playing like each passage of play and each duel, it's like your life depends on it. Now you can, if you hit levels that are high on all of those criteria, regardless of tactical setup that you're up against, you've got a great chance in every game you play in. But more than that, fans will recognise that. There's days where you're up against a low block, there's a tactical setup that you struggle against, there's maybe a day where you hit the post 3 or 4 times, it's not your day, referee's decision goes against you. I can live with all of that. But I know the difference between seeing when those levels are up and when those levels aren't up. And if you keep those levels up, regardless of opposition, regardless of tactical setup of the opposition, more often than not, you're going to get good results. And the performance will probably be better. So are we capable of beating Fulham at home if those levels are really high? I believe so, yes. I believe we are. Plus the tactical nous of people like Steve Holland and what Carrick's doing and the rest of the coaching staff and the slightly different way we look like we set up when we're defending looks different. The press looks different. The mid block that we sit in at times is different to what I've seen before. There's definitely differences, particularly in the midfield, actually, in the way that the team's structured and set up. Tactically, there's differences. So I'm not just downplaying it that Carrick has come in with his coaching team and it's just shits and giggles. I think it's far more complex than that. But if you keep those levels high alongside those things, you've got a great chance to win some games. And if you beat Fulham, Tottenham and West Ham, the profile of opposition that we've struggled against this season, that's 9 points from where we've just won 2 games in a row. First of all, that'll be 5 wins in a row. All if, buts and maybes, I know. But that guy gets his hair cut because it's 5 games in a row that we've won. But that's accruing an awful lot of points from a position of strength. And if you get those points, I honestly believe 4th will almost be locked down, bar a catastrophic run of form, because the rest of the teams around us are so inconsistent. And we're already in 4th. I think we're 4 clear of 7th. Let me put it a different way. Europe is probably locked down if we win our next 3 games. But beyond that, Carrick's support, or the support for Carrick, becomes louder and louder and louder and louder because he's shown he could do it against those profile of opposition as well. So I've got belief in Carrick. I think he's probably a quietly strong presence at United. I think he's brought something of the United feeling back, as I mentioned before. No mean feat, like people can say it's a managerial bounce. We haven't had it since Ollie. And he's got to go some to get what Ollie got. He's got to win in the next few games to be able to do that. But there's something there. One of the other reasons I think it would make sense for Carrick to get the job, and again, it's a big if, I'm qualifying it with an if, this could all just blow up in our face, but if he continues in the right track and it's looking like we're going to get Europe, say for example in March, we need to be looking at players that we're going to bring in the summer. You don't just start looking in June and July or start making contact with those players and their representatives. You do it in February, March. And I'll use Elliot Anderson and Wharton as the examples. You go to them in March and you say, Jason Wilcox goes to them and says, I don't know who the manager's going to be. This is our shortlist, which you're going to have to keep to yourself. But our vision for the club is blah, 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 blah. Elliot Anderson's going to go, I think I'll give that a swerve. I've got City after me as well. And even if City don't know for sure that it's going to be Guardiola, their setup, their structure is really impressive. And they've got very recent history of like incredible success. So that's going to be far more attractive. If United didn't have a manager, but you've got Luis Campos as your, I think that's his name, as your director of football, or even a Dan Ashworth, or someone with some pedigree, like I mentioned before with attracting managers. If you've got someone like that, and they go to Elliot Anderson and say, we don't know who the manager is yet, but you can see what we're all about. You can see where the club's going. You can see the strides we're making. Yeah, then maybe they go, oh, yeah, all right, I don't really care who the manager is because the club's so impressive, but we haven't got that. So if you in March or April, I wouldn't announce it to the press like they did with Ollie, because there was a massive um, regression in form after that. But maybe behind closed doors, you're thinking, probably going to go with this. And it gives you stability to be able to go and talk to those targets, which I think it's important. Whether we're in Europe or not next season, which we've got a good chance now, squad development's massively important. And if we're in Europe, we need significant investment, because this squad hasn't got the depth of quality to cope with another potentially 16 games or whatever it might be if you get to the latter stages of European competitions. If it's the Conference League or the Europa League, you'd hope to be able to do that. It hasn't got the depth of quality to do that, so we're going to need a lot of players, and you can't start pissing around appointing a manager at the end of the season. The other thing I'd say is, I've covered Ancelotti, Enrique, and Tuchel and given my reasons why I don't think that'd happen. The other thing I'd say is, if Carrick gets us into Europe, who's out there that we could hang our hat on that's going to be much better? So De Zerbi is the name that's been mentioned a few times, apparently much admired by Ineos. He's all right. I don't think he's pulled up any trees in management. He did all right at Brighton. He was at Shakhtar Donetsk. He's gone to Marseille. He's doing okay. Is he a manager that comes in and wins Premier Leagues? No, but neither would the other three that I mentioned who've got pedigree for doing it. But is he a manager that comes in and fulfills the criteria of getting into Europe season in, season out? I don't think necessarily so. I think he's an upgrade on what we've had recently. If you give me a choice between Carrick, if he gets United into Europe, or De Zerbi, I'd stick with Carrick for many of the reasons I've just mentioned. Glasner, Iraola from Bournemouth, they're project managers, they're builders of things. Those types of people need time, money, patience, and expert operators all around them. We haven't got any of that at United. There's no point in giving it to a builder or a project manager. Would they do as they're told? Glasner probably wouldn't. I think Iraola gives me the impression he would. I might be wrong with that, but he does give me that impression. So the board might be attracted to that. De Zerbi wouldn't, by the way. So that ticks a box for the board on the Iraola front. But as I say, he's a project manager, and there's no good to United that with this board here. And then you're left with there's probably more that I've not mentioned, maybe Pochettino, but again, he's in a World Cup, and I think that ship has sailed. I think it was something we should have done 8 years ago, not now. Then you're down to Carrick or Southgate, and if you give me Carrick or Southgate, I'm taking Carrick every day of the week. Carrick can be United's answer to Southgate, as Southgate was for England, in terms of a guy who knows the lay of the land, knows the institution, probably knows the pitfalls of it, and can hopefully cultivate a culture, a subculture that's quite special. And by the way, if Carrick gets Europe, what that means, by virtue of the fact he's got Europe, is that he's built something, is that he's built a camaraderie. He probably has built something of a subculture. He's got under the players' skin. He's got into their heads, as it appears that he has already, him and his coaching staff. And if you've got that momentum, and if you've got that connection that's been built, and you've got a feel-good factor, and you finish high up in the league, are you going to tear all that up to get De Zerbi? I can understand why you tear it all up to get Ancelotti or Enrique, but you're not going to get them, like I said. So are you going to tear it all up to get Roberto De Zerbi? I wouldn't. I'd stick with Carrick. So I repeat, this is all completely a hypothesis based on if we get Europe. But I'm in well, you're probably giving it away really by what I've said. The third, as I say, there's a three-way split in the fan base for me. There's a third who probably agree with Roy Keane that come what may, he shouldn't get the job because we need a manager who's got better experience, and we've been here before with Solskjaer, maybe that type of stuff. You've got a third who are probably somewhere in the middle, and you've got a third who would advocate for it if he does a sufficiently good job between now and the end of the season. I'm in that third, and I've explained the reasons why. Just before I go on Keane, the statement's ridiculous, because it's obviously very unrealistic. If United won every game between now and the season, we could win the league. I think worst case scenario, we'd finish second or third if we won every game between now and the season. So of course he's going to get the job if that happened. But I think what he's trying to say is he's being facetious. It's like he could do the most outrageously good thing. He could have a 100% record, and that's how strongly I feel about it. That I still wouldn't give him the job. But is it a balanced opinion? I love Roy Keane. He's my favourite player. My heroes growing up when I first started going to United, Brian Robson and Mark Hughes. When I first started going in the late 80s, I adored them. Then Cantona, then Keane. The difference was, as I got older and into adulthood and started to have a season ticket, Keane continued to play whilst the others had all retired. And I watched him up close and personal. And I saw him at the peak of his powers. I've met him. I love him. I love him. He's brilliant. But I also know he has a very, very nasty side to him, and he holds a grudge. And he clearly doesn't like Michael Carrick. So I know Gary Neville probably thinks, who does like Michael Carrick, thinks we need a Tuchel or an Ancelotti or an Enrique. But as I say, it's idealistic. We're not going to get a manager like that. And if you think that's the way forward, then you need to focus your energy on ridding ourselves of these owners, because that's the only way we get a manager like that. I wish we had new owners, but we don't. So within this ownership structure, and I said this when Amorim got sacked, we don't need a great manager. It's not going to work with a pedigree manager. It isn't going to work. It's just going to lead to further frustration, because you'll have fans going, well, we've got him and we're still shit. We're still only finishing 6th or 5th or whatever, or maybe in the Champions League, but it won't go any further than that. You've got just as much chance to do that with Carrick. And from the board's perspective, he's cheap, it's easy. He isn't going to kick up a stink. The fans love him. He understands the club. So if he gets you Europe, it's an absolute no-brainer. As I said, if we had different owners and he got us Champions League football, I think he would deserve an interview, but you'd probably go down a different route. Haven't got different owners. So under this ownership structure, he's a shoo-in if he gets Europe, as far as I'm concerned, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. Let me know your thoughts. Blazers out.